this is how we win, guys, is localism. If you want to capture a country, you don't storm the castle, you capture the countryside.
This guy is living a double life as an online trans porn star.
A mayor and a pastor? Hey, by the way, there's a pastor down the road who's doubling as a trans porn star and writing homoerotic stories about kids. Oh my gosh. We need believers who are living as if their city and their county and their state are actually the most important because it's where you live. Guys, localism is how we save America. You know this. Local media, local politics, and the local church was how America was founded, how it was intended to operate, and what we must get back to. We're not going to have that much of a direct influence on D.C., guys. The swamp is the swamp. Okay, it's hard to get rid of a swamp, but you can change where you live. And when we all do that together, the whole country changes. Brian Dawson, CEO of 1819 News, the second largest news source in the state of Alabama, brings definition to how localism can change the landscape of America's communities. Dawson shares his incredible story of how he came to be, how the Lord brought him to launch this very influential news agency. It sounds like a story straight out of a movie. I mean, like Hallmark must be begging for the rights to it. 1819 News took off because they broke a story that the mainstream media would not touch. This story includes, a pastor who was also a mayor who had a secret life, including a pedophilic transgender fetish. You can't make this stuff up. That's why local news and local politics is so important. Give us a rating and review to help us reach more people. We really appreciate it. You're gonna be blown away by this conversation. This is an episode you're gonna want to share with people to help us here at the Seth Gruber Show get the truth to people who care, to people whose hearts are angered by evil and want to do something about it. That's what this show is all about. So give us 5 stars on the podcast app, write in a little review. It means so much to us. And follow me on Rumble. We unfortunately have, what were we accused of last time by YouTube? That we posted nudity and they took down my whole YouTube channel for 48 hours. And then YouTube apologized and said that, of course, we did not upload nudity on my podcast. And they reinstated it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much longer, we're going to be on YouTube if they're going to allow it. So will you do me a favor? If you listen to this show, will you go subscribe at Rumble, where free speech lives to help us survive in case we're ever digitally assassinated? Then join us at the White Rose Resistance. Okay, we are a digital media and activism organization. We have activist resistance chapters in Northern California, Southern California, Dallas, Fort Worth, Denver, Florida, New York. That's right, New York, Maine. We're launching new ones this next year. We have to get the local church engaged. Believers have to stop just saying amen to their pastor preaching truth, but standing for that truth in the public square. That's what we do at the White Rose Resistance. If that matters to you, we need your help. Go to thewhiterose.life, thewhiterose.life, and become an ally at $35 a month. We will ship a battle box to you to welcome you to the resistance, baby. And then join us on our app, the White Rose app, our community. There's so much on there. It's going to blow you away. Courses, curriculum, live calls, trainings, pro-life, pro-choice, role-playing and arguments to prepare you to be a pro-life ninja. There's whole question and answer, the curriculum for your teenagers, small group studies to go through if you want to really understand our culture. And then at $70 a month, that we call that air support, you join our Books in the Barracks book club. So right now we're finishing reading Christianity and Liberalism by J. Gresham Machen, 1923-24, he writes that. It's going to blow your mind. So if you want to talk about books with me and our supporters from all around the world, it's great for your teenagers. Inculcate your kids against wokeism. Get them prepared to take back America. So we pour into you because you are the resistance, and our ministry exists to put ourselves out of a job by reawakening the local church in America again. Go to thewhiterose.life and become an ally if that matters to you. Let's get into it. This is the Seth Gruber Show. Brian Dawson, 1819 News. Brother, welcome to the show, man.
Man, I am fired up to be here. I didn't know if I was going to get you on my show or me on your show first, and you beat me to the punch. So here I am.
Got you first, dude. Well, people are going, listen, guys, you're going to absolutely be blown away at what Brian's doing for the country, the culture, the church, the truth. We have had a problem with reliable sources of information and disseminating the facts. what's the CNN thing? Like, we know an apple to the people. 2020 was a real wake up call for a lot of like sleepy patriots, sleepy Christians of like, wow, it is like really easy to be lied to from the highest levels of the federal government and the highest levels of our trusted news sources, so that people, just like millions of people, believe a lie. The whole speaking truth to power, that doesn't seem to really represent like American journalism anymore in the 21st century. I don't really know how to set you up, bro. I could think of a million ways to do so. But guys, you're going to be so blessed by what 1819 News is doing. You might not know that name yet. Oh, but you are going to soon. Brian Dawson, tell us a little bit about what you're building and who you are.
Yeah, and those two definitely kind of coincide, obviously. But what we're building, I mean, in simplest form, is we're a statewide, state-focused news and multimedia empire with the intent to take out the left-leaning media outlet of record in our state. And so I'll unpack that. We're statewide and state-focused. What does that mean? We're not focused on D.C. We're not focused on what Nancy Pelosi's doing. We're not focused on what Vladimir Putin's doing. We have a state right here, right here in Alabama. And what we've seen nationally, we've actually seen the decentralization of mass media, and independent news sources have actually become mainstream. And what I mean by that is everything from Tucker Carlson to even like Tim Dillon, okay, have massive followings, millions of followers, and they are actually being used as a news source where people have stopped going to Fox, they've stopped going to CNN, they've stopped going to ABC, CBS, NBC, whatever. Those are no longer trusted news sources, and you've seen this huge shift towards independent media or decentralized media as primary sources to get news. That's at the national and geopolitical level. That is never, but you look at the state and local level, and it's still completely dominated by leftist progressives. Okay. And so these companies, these leftist companies from the coastal areas, whether it's Gannett, whether it's Advanced Media Newhouse Publication, which is the problem we have in Alabama, came in and bought up the Birmingham News, the Mobile Press Register, and the Huntsville Times, and purchased those when they kind of crumbled, and then started using them to pump out communist propaganda. Gannett came in and bought up like the Montgomery Advertiser and a lot of these smaller town publications. And so local journalism is completely dead across the country. And to my knowledge, with the exception of Alpha News is doing great work, but they're only focused on the metro of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and they're doing phenomenal work. But as far as statewide, no one in the country is doing what we're doing. And it was a total grace of God that got us to be able to do it here in Alabama. And when you hear the story, it's literally like, you would be like, look at what's happened, and be like, wow, this Brian guy's pretty talented. No, I just stepped through doors that God opens, and that's it. And sometimes it's not fun to step through those doors, but that's about it. That's all I can really take credit for.
So 1819 News is now one of the largest news sources in the state of Alabama. Talk about that.
So from a standpoint of ratings or viewership, page views, in our KPIs, whatever, we are the second largest statewide news outlet in Alabama, but we're the only legitimate one that people take serious. And so you have the AL.com, which is the one that bought the Huntsville Times, Mobile Press Register, the Birmingham News. That group has a larger reach and a larger audience, but they're talking about sports. That's the reason people go there, sports, weather, stuff like that. But if you're talking about what's actually going on in the state, what's going on at the State House, what's going on at this city council meeting, what's going on with the pornographic images that are grooming children in libraries, if we're going into, why is it that Auburn University, which is an agrarian university that has an extremely conservative reputation, hired a guy. So we busted a guy in a middle school in the.
So hold on. Are you going to tell the story about how 1819 News kind of blew up?
Yeah, that I'm happy to tell that story. I was gonna ease into that.
Okay, continue what you were saying. Okay, continue what you were saying.
So in Auburn city school system, there was a middle school teacher who was just an openly flamboyant, in your face homosexual. Okay, not like gym teacher lesbians like we used to have. You know what I mean? This was like a in your face, full blown, I'm gonna groom you homosexual. Okay. And everyone with two eyes and a brain could have seen this, but they said, you know what? That guy needs to be a teacher. Okay, don't know whose decision that was. And so this is going to surprise you, Seth. He knew he couldn't talk about this stuff in the classroom, but all the kids had phones. And he said, you know what? I need to make a podcast and an Instagram feed. And on the Instagram feed, he was getting lap dances from a gay guy in a thong. And on the podcast, he was literally using the podcast to communicate directly to students through this digital medium, saying, F your parents. If you want to question your gender, you go ahead and do it. Okay. So we get this guy fired. Okay. From Drake Middle School in Auburn, and then Auburn University, a wonderful university, like they are the best we have in the state, but they still have these issues, and I think they're going to start working to clean it up in large part because of the exposure that we've brought. But man, if they didn't hire this guy 2 weeks later to coach autistic students at Auburn University,
no,
I promise you, yes, that happened. Same guy. They're like, oh man, did that dude just get fired for grooming kids? That's our guy. That's our special needs coach. I can see it because he just resigned for grooming kids. I don't know who makes those decisions, but we exposed him for that. Auburn University doesn't do anything. And then after Charlie Kirk dies, he goes onto social media and says all kinds of horrible things that I won't even repeat because I don't want to dishonor him. Horrible, just egregious things against Charlie Kirk after his death, and then they fire him after that. And it's like, if you would have just fired him when we first brought it up, you wouldn't have had to deal with this, you know?
Wow.
And so, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but this is the ability to actually have a news organization with the right worldview that is fearless, filled with courage, and I would say, at least in the leadership, a post-millennial eschatology of victory, okay? And we're going out like David going against Goliath, and buddy, we're slinging stones.
Oh man, guys, my listeners, I'm so sorry that I did not introduce you to Brian Dawson before. I don't know if you just caught all of that, but like basically show me the group in the country that's run by believers that's honest about their biases, by the way. Like, I love that, Brian, because like the secular media pretends to be unbiased. It's just facts first, you know. Washington Post, democracy dies in darkness, as if they're the bringers of light or something, like whatever, with their Pinocchio lying score or whatever. Okay, like, so everyone has biases. That's one thing I actually appreciate about Daily Wire. You know, is, you know, Ben Shapiro has always said, like, we're conservative leaning. Now you know what you're getting. Like, why not just admit it? The left doesn't. Their media sources, they pretend to be unbiased, but we all know better. And so listen, like, this is how we win, guys, is localism. Like, I just made this point at the Last Stand event we did in June. Like, I love this line from Napoleon Bonaparte. Like, if you want to capture a country, you don't storm the castle, you capture the countryside. And we need believers who are living as if their city and their county and their state are actually the most important, because it's where you live. Yeah. And if we can establish sanity, righteousness, order where we live, where we actually have influence, that's how you change the country. Guys, that's what 1819 News is doing. That's why I'm such a big fan of what they're doing. Now, Brian, maybe we I don't know, either we go back to the way beginning, because I want people to know who you are. Sure. Or we can start in the most recent, talk about how 1819 News got started, and then go back to who's Brian Dawson. You feel free wherever you want to go, but you are one of the most interesting, fascinating, bold, like testicular fortitude dudes I've ever met. And so, like, I also want people to get to know Brian Dawson because as the ringleader at 1819 News, I think people are just going to be blessed by it.
Amen. Well, thank you. I'm blushing under my beard, Seth. I don't know if you can see that. Let's go with who is Brian Dawson, because I think very much the Lord in his providence has seen, in the same way that he gave the Apostle Paul Roman citizenship, right? He made him be in Rome, so because that was going to come in handy later. I believe God put me through quite a bit of turmoil in my past to prepare me for what I'm doing right now. Amen. And it's a good, like, one of my mentors has told me, he said, there was a day I remember when I woke up, when I finally realized what God had put me on this earth to do. And the comfort that comes from that. And I feel that I'm very close, if not pretty much right on the money. Like, God created me to do this. And I'm going to go back and explain kind of how I've gotten to that conclusion. So when I was 23 years old, I was facing 384 years in prison for attempted murder, aggravated robbery, and extortion. And that was my 6th felony. And this was in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Man, that's almost as much prison time as they tried to do Trump on, man.
Yeah,
that's
I know.
impressive.
I got to get my numbers up. I don't know what, still got to get on the SPLC hate list. I've got all these goals and I'm just falling short.
Oh, man. Okay, well,
Terrible.
let's help you out.
Yeah. So I'll back up. 1984, I'm born in Colorado Springs, Colorado, to 2 parents that could not have been more different. I think this also matters in the story. My dad is from West Monroe, Louisiana, swamp redneck who grew up with Phil Robertson. My grandma, we call her Mamu, taught Sunday school for 30 years with Miss Kay. So swamp redneck. My dad was literally dirt floor poor, hunted for food, and they had a garden back when poor people were skinny. Think about that. Back when poor people were skinny. Now, fattest poor people I've ever seen. But that's beside the point. So my dad, swamp redneck. My mom was the daughter of a state senator in Colorado, kind of country club upbringing. And so you've got this, daughter of a state senator who marries the swamp redneck and produces this. And then shortly after they get divorced. And that is kind of my pedigree that I describe it as a mix between the Duck Dynasty, swamp redneck, and a little bit of, senator thing, whatever. Serves me well. And courts put me with my mom when, after the divorce. And, my mom, wonderful lady, she's actually right over in the next room. She lives with me and has been through hell. And she had a very rough upbringing as well, though it be, country club, though it be a daughter of a state senator, she still experienced a ton of trauma in her youth. And it carried forward. And because of that, it wasn't exactly the most stable environment to grow up in. And from 2 to 10, my life was very much, if you've seen the J.D. Vance movie or read the book, Hillbilly Elegy, it was that to a T. And my mom and I watched that movie recently, and we were just in tears watching the movie because of how reminiscent it was of that time where, she drank a lot, took pharmaceutical drugs. I used to watch her get beat on a somewhat regular basis. It was just it was not, and those are formative years, right? And it was a 2 to 10 was a very rough time for me in that environment. But like I said, on the JD Vance thing, I always tell people, me and JD Vance are basically the same person. I mean, the beard, the astonishing good looks. But JD Vance, got into the Marines and went to Yale, and I got into drugs and went to jail. So it's basically, same thing. Potato,
Otherwise,
potato.
totally the same.
Yeah, exactly. That's maybe why I'm not the vice president. Drats. But, through that, when I'm 10, I move in with my dad. Things begin to get better. I begin to thrive in the structure that my dad provides, but I still have a lot of issues, and I dealt with those issues by drinking and doing drugs. And I found out pretty quickly, in order to do drugs, the good ones, you have to sell drugs because they're expensive. And I found that the same thing that makes me really good at what I do for a living now, which is networking, sales, and persuasion, made me really good at what I was doing then. And in about a 5-year period, starting when I was 17, I went from selling little bits of marijuana to where I was pushing kilos of cocaine and pounds of methamphetamines for cartels in Colorado Springs. Okay. And so in a 5-year period, I racked up 6 felonies. That last felony was the attempted murder, aggravated robbery, and extortion. And what happened there, as a gentleman had informed the cops about some illegal activity that I was involved in, and that's against the rules in that lifestyle. And I found out about it, and so I went to his house and paid him a visit and got into a physical altercation that left him very bad off. I threatened his brother and stole some stuff out of his house. Turns out the cops frown upon that behavior, as they should. And I got arrested shortly after that and charged with those severe charges. And now I'm in county jail. There's a whole story about going on the run and being a fugitive and jumping out of buildings and rappelling and all that stuff. I don't think we have time to cover that. Maybe you can bring me back on later for that. You tell me. But
well, we need the Brian Dawson Netflix film now after the JD Vance one.
Is it going to be if it's the Netflix film? Am I going to be black? I think that's how that works, isn't it? I'm not 100% sure.
Probably, Brian. Probably.
Okay, yeah. I don't know. So anyway, fast forward. So county jail, looking at the rest of my life in prison. Okay.
Wow.
And I think I'm going to go to prison for the rest of my life. And so I got to be this bad dude. So I click up with the wrong people. I start getting in fights because I want to create a reputation. Right. I catch 2 more assault cases, and then they put me in a jail cell by myself for 23 hours a day. I get an hour out to make a phone call, take a shower, and I go back to my cell. I was there for 4 months. 3 months into that stay, God begins to get a hold of me. I don't believe that the Lord had saved me yet, but kind of in his effectual call, he began to open my eyes to my responsibility in my circumstances, which is a big deal. If you know people who struggle with drug addiction and making poor choices and things like that, oftentimes they're blaming their current circumstances on other people. And for me, it was true. I blame my mom. I blame my dad. I blame the cops. I blame the judge. I blame the district attorney. I blame the system. And I believed like in my bones that I was a victim of all these outside circumstances. But God in his goodness opened my eyes to the fact that it was my fault that I was in there. Okay. And that was like the big epiphany that I can go back and look at that moment, that day in that cell by myself, where it changed for me. And if you can imagine, I'm having this epiphany in a cell by myself and there's nobody to talk to about it. And I'm just walking around. It's my fault. It's my fault. But I digress. So I have that epiphany. And so I begin to really take responsibility and kind of agency for my thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and start to make good decisions, as small as they are in a cell by yourself. But it created positive momentum in my life that my family began to take notice of. And so they really rallied behind me. While I was in that cell by myself, they came back to me and said, look, if you go to trial tomorrow and, lose your trial, you'll get very likely, if they do all the sentence enhancements and they trump up all the charges and all this stuff, which they can do because you're a habitual criminal, there was violence, you were on probation when it happened, right? Like there's all these things that they can trump it up to that 384. If you get the 384, if you go to trial, but if you plead guilty, we'll only give you 32 years with the crime of violence, which means you'll do 24 years. I'm like, only 32 years? And so I was like, man. And I shortened the story for our time constraints here. By the grace of God, I was able to get into a mediation hearing where I was able to negotiate it down to a 16-year sentence with no crime of violence. And that crime of violence is a big deal in Colorado prison time, because on a 32, you're going to do 24 with the crime of violence. On a 16-year sentence with no crime of violence, you can get out in 5 years and 2 months. Okay?
Wow.
And so it was a big, big deal. I knew that God had moved, and that was kind of him continuing to plow the soil of my heart as I'm seeing these like divine things happen where I'm like, whoa, this wasn't supposed to happen. And so he's getting my attention. I end up getting shipped off to the Colorado Department of Corrections. The first person I meet there is a guy by the name of Charles Frederick, who begins to plant gospel seeds in my life. That goes on for a number of years. He gets me into some faith-based programs, and that really challenged me. And I didn't like what they were saying, and I thought they were all stupid for what they believed. I knew that God was real. I always believed that God was real since I was a kid, and I prayed to God after having some church experience or whatever in my younger days, because I knew these people in this church had what I wanted, had something that I wanted, but I didn't know anything about Jesus. I didn't know any of that. And so I hated Christianity and I hated Christians. And so I tied Christ to that, and I didn't know about him. And so I could believe that some Jewish guy got nailed to a piece of wood, 2,000 years ago and created a cult following. I could believe that. But my challenge was, as I was coming back from one of those programs, and Charles challenged me, he said, Brian, why don't you give him a chance? And so I went back to my cell and prayed, because I prayed to God because I believed God was real. I just didn't understand the Jesus piece. And I prayed often, all through addiction, through being a fugitive, through prison or county jail, praying. So I go back to my cell and pray, and I say, God, if I need to believe that this Jesus character was truly your son, that he was born of a virgin, that he lived a perfect life, that he died and his death did something for me, and that he rose from the dead. And I'm scoffing as I say all these things, because these are the issues I have. If I need to believe these things to be okay with you, I need you to show me something. And I go to sleep that night, and I have this awful dream. It's like a demonic dream. I remember it, okay? And I'm like falling off of a cliff at the end of the dream, and right before I hit the ground, I pop up and look kind of around the cell, and it's completely dark in my prison cell, and the only thing I could see is we had those old red digital clocks. And it said 3:16. And 3:16 is the only Bible verse I've ever known in my entire life. I went to an independent fundamentalist Baptist church for a year. Praise the Lord for that. It even recited in my head in King James only. Anyway, and so but that was the answer to my question. God, if I need to believe this, okay, for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son, whosoever believeth in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. That is the direct answer to the question that I asked, and it was Sunday morning at 3:16 in the morning. And so I get up that morning and I end up going to Christian services, as they call it in prison. And the preacher does an invitation at the end. And I go up there, and he knew me from some other interactions that we had. And he grabs my hand and puts his other hand on my shoulder and says, "Mr. Dawson, how can I pray for you?" And I look back at the words that I told him, and I'm like, how did I know to say those words? Now that I understand theology and things. But my prayer request, I said, "Look, chap, I'm not here to make any decisions. I want you to pray for God to soften my heart so the truth can come in, because I can feel him working on me, but I'm fighting it with everything I have." And we get done praying, and he's just got tears pouring down his face. And this is not a guy that cries. He doesn't do hugs. He's like a total prison chaplain, okay? That kind of guy. And he was just weeping. And I was like, whoa. And I count that the moment that I actually got saved. And from there, Charles gave me a Bible, Thomas Nelson, New King James. And he said, start reading the story of Joseph. Don't put it down. So I just start feasting on God's word month after month after month, feasting on his word. And about 9 months into this, I see all my friends in there have pen pals. And I'm like, man, I'd like a pen pal. And so I reach out to my mom, who's running a Facebook page for me. Nice. I have no idea what the legalities of that are, but I believe I'm past the, where you can get charged with that now. So I think I'm good to say that. Statute of limitations. Anyway, so my mom was running a Facebook page for me while I was in there. And I said, hey, reach out to some girls from my past and see if they want to write me. And I don't know if you know this, Seth, but healthy women don't like to write guys in prison. Who knew? Yeah, I know. And all my rejection and sadness, I guess I had some false hope there somewhere. And so I went back and I prayed and I said, God, if you want me to have a pen pal, I'm going to let you do it. I'm just going to go back to reading my Bible and doing my thing. And so that's what I did. And about a month goes by, I reach out to my mom and call her just to check in. And she says, Brian, do you know a girl named Christina Ewan? I said, well, yes, ma'am. Christina Ewan was the girl I was head over heels in love with all throughout middle school and high school. Like if you laid out all my yearbooks from kindergarten to 12th grade and said, you can pick one girl to marry, who would it be? I said, it would have been Christina just immediately, every single time. And she says, okay, well, she wants to write you. What? Excuse me? I said, does she know I'm in prison? She said, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, that's interesting. And I didn't know what to do or think or say. And so I ended up getting her address from my mom and writing her the first letter. I'm like, look, I didn't get drunk and run somebody's dog over. Like, I belong here. Like, I've earned this sentence. But God has saved me, and I'm an open book. And so she writes back, and in my mind, she's married to a doctor in a 3,500 square foot house with a white picket fence and the 2.5 kids and the dog in the minivan. Like, that's where she was headed, right? The last time I saw her 10 years before.
Right. And
she writes me back and says, Brian, actually, she didn't say actually because she was just writing. You get it? Brian, I got married and had a son, and got a divorce, and I'm a single mom and I'm living in Alabama, and I actually just got saved a few months ago. I was like, wow, interesting. And so we began to just write and back and forth about what the preacher was preaching on that Sunday. And she started sending me books. It's sad to say one of them was a Rick Warren book, not proud, but all's well that ends well, Seth.
It's okay.
All's well that ends well. I survived that. Prison and Rick Warren. It's amazing what the Lord has done. But I get to the point where I've got to tell her how I feel. And here I am. She rejected me all through middle school and high school, by the way. Okay. Like I got friend zoned, the Heisman, and just like put in the friend zone all through middle school and high school. And here I am in prison. My stock can't get any lower. And I have to tell her how I feel through a written letter that it's going to have like a 3-week turnaround on it. And I'm just sitting there for weeks waiting. Yeah. And she writes back and says, Brian, I know God wants me to be with you. And so whether you get out in 10 days or 10 years, I'm going to be here. And she is, and she was, and she's the mother of my 7 children. And she's incredible. And so shortly after that, I'm able to
I don't know if Hollywood wants to buy the rights to your life story because you're a Christian nationalist, but surely Hallmark wants this story. Can we just make you like a multi-millionaire through Hallmark rights to this story? You can't make this up.
that would be good. I've actually always wanted the Irwin brothers to do, because everyone tells me, I tell my story, like, this is going to be a movie, this is going to be a movie, this is going to be a movie. And I'm in Alabama. I'm in Irwin family territory. Okay. The Irwin brothers come from Birmingham. And they are, like homeschool, like they come from like homeschool bunch of kids, like background or whatever. And I'm like, seems like a fit. I don't know if I'm too hardline right wing for them. I'm pretty much too too right wing for just about everybody except you, Seth, and that's why I like you.
There you go.
That's why I appreciate you.
Well, so how does God use this like unreal, like can't make that up, I don't believe you story for 1819 News as this like unabashedly conservative Christian news source, exposing stories, chasing stories, exposing evil, shining light in real dark places. One of the only groups doing this at the state level. I mean, tell us what happened next with you. But first, we want to thank our sponsor of the Seth Gruber Show, Every Life Diaper Company. You heard our conversation recently with CEO and founder of Every Life, Sarah Gable Seifert. It's powerful because when believers shop in alignment with their values, meaning that they don't patronize businesses who hate Christianity, hate the unborn, hate the nuclear family, and want to make gayness great again. When you don't shop at those kind of businesses and companies, you actually send a powerful cultural message, right? To establish norms again and taboos again. When woke corporatism gets rejected by the people, then they stop being woke idiots. They keep their mouth shut about politics, and maybe they even become base conservatives. Why? Because the people have spoken through their wallet. Okay, it's the whole Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light phenomenon. That's a beautiful thing when we can like ruin companies because of their wokeness. If you are having babies or your kids are having babies and you're a grandparent, why not use Every Life Diaper Company? Actually, I'm telling you to get your diapers and wipes from everylife.com, America's only pro-life, pro-America, pro-freedom diaper company. Now they have a whole femme line as well. And then they have non-toxic baby shampoos. Go to everylife.com, promo code Seth10, Seth10, Seth10 for 10% off your first order. My wife and I, we get Every Life delivered to the house. So you can do the subscription model. I think you save some money and like then you don't have to make emergency runs to Walmart. Everylife.com, promo code Seth10 for 10% off your first order. Let them know that we sent you, please. And that's how you're going to change America. Okay? Fight with your wallet, baby. Thank you, Every Life, for sponsoring the Seth Gruber Show.
Yeah. And again, this is going to be the abbreviated version. So after 5 years and 2 months, I'm eligible to put in for a halfway house. And I do. And I go to this intense behavior modification program where I get out. Christina and I get married there. And about 11 years ago, December will be 11 years, I moved to Alabama to be with her. And I moved to Alabama. And my very first job is working at USA Radio Networks. And Steve Deace is actually the first person I work with in media, which is awesome because I flip and love Steve and just think he's the best. And so that was the first person I worked with. But my job was to grow their products. And so if their radio show was on one station, it was my job to get them to 2 to 10 to 50, right? And if they had a radio news product that they produced, if it was on 10 stations, they wanted it on 100 stations or whatever, right? And so I helped them with their radio news, basically look at it. And there was a team of people there, Russ Jones and Rusty Humphreys and some others, where we basically reproduced it, made it sound better because it was a 5-minute newscast. It sounded like it was produced on a Casio keyboard in the 80s because it was. And they were only targeting AM news talk stations. And I said, hey, what if we, offer the well-produced short version of this to music stations that have these things called human beings listening? What a thought, And they were like, you're stupid. You're the new guy. That's never going to work. And I was like, thank you for the encouragement. But it ended up working, and it got on hundreds of music stations, and it blew up. And from that success, my name got out in the industry. And the guy that created Laura Ingram's radio show, a gentleman named Lee Habib, wonderful man, he hears about that success, and he just reaches out and calls me. So you're talking about the guy that created Laura Ingram's radio show, who's still the vice president of content at Salem to this day, where he's overseen everyone from Bill Bennett to Dennis Prager, Eric Metaxas, Larry Elder, you name it. He's been their boss there or overseen their shows, the monetary aspect of their shows. And this guy is picking up the phone to call me. It's like a call from Steinbrenner to come play for the Yankees. Okay. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, Lee Habib wants me to come work for him. And that's what he says. He says, Brian, I want you to come work for me. Didn't ask anything about me, nothing. He's just like, I've seen the success you had. I want you to come do that here. And I'm thinking about all my felonies, and I'm like, crap. He lived in Oxford, Mississippi at the time. And so I'm like, I'd like to learn more about the opportunity. He says, great, kid, you can come stay at my house. He's from Jersey. He's got the kid, And so I go and stay at his house and I share my testimony with him, and I'm thinking he's going to run for the hills. And him and his wife, we were at a little diner in Oxford, Mississippi, had tears in his eyes. He said, "You're the exact person I want working for me."
Wow.
And so my deal with him that day, I said, "Look, I don't want to grow people's radio products for the rest of my life. I want to learn the business." And I said, "I'll make you a deal. I'll grow your show, but I want you to teach me everything you know about the media industry." And he said, "All right, kid, you grow my show. I teach you everything I know." And so for the next 4.5 years, I sat at his feet learning everything I possibly could about the media industry. Just unbelievable. You couldn't pay for that type of an education. Okay. And I just, like a sponge, just soaked up everything I could. And in that time period, I grew him from 80 stations to 330 stations. And then we ended up doing a deal with Premiere and iHeart, which is as big as it gets in the world. So it exploded. Yeah, and it's now the 10th ranked show in the country, by the way, spoken word show in the country.
Wow.
And from there, I made good on my deal. He made good on his. And now it's July 2020. If you remember the Summer of Love, mostly peaceful protests, mild virus going around, big election. It's good times in our country's history. And so he introduces me to Bernie Marcus, who's one of the founders of Home Depot, who is trying to help Trump get reelected. So I joined one of his teams to try and help Trump get reelected. And we've got to do this massive media-driven get out the vote effort. Had to raise $6 million. We raised the money. We executed the strategy. Blood, sweat, and tears. 80 hours a week. Hardest I've ever worked my entire life. Comes down on November 4th, and I watched the election get stolen. And that is when I became disenfranchised with national politics, national fundraising, and national. I felt like trying to fix DC was like trying to squirt out the sun with a water pistol. Okay. Like, we don't have the horsepower to do this. And so I went to church shortly after that, and my pastor started preaching on localism. Okay. Fathers fix your families, family be in church, church make up communities, churches make up communities, communities make up cities, cities make up counties, counties make up states. And it was like getting kicked in the head by a donkey, just like, how have I not thought of this? And so I came home and prayed with my wife and said, "God, how can I use my gifts, talents, abilities, resources, and relationships to make a difference for my people in place right here in Alabama?" And a week later, Caleb Crosby from the Alabama Policy Institute calls me. Okay. He was the president of the Alabama Policy Institute at the time. I barely knew him. And he just calls me out of the blue, like right after I pray this. And he's like, "Hey, we're starting a radio show in Huntsville. I would love your thoughts." I tell him what he needs to do. And at the end, he says, "You know what we really need is a statewide, state-focused news and multimedia empire to take out the left-leaning media out of record in the state." And so that's it. And the name of the show that I helped grow, by the way, I didn't say it, is called Our American Stories with Lee Habib. That was the show. It's a phenomenal show, telling the story of America to Americans each and every night. Great show. I always give him a shout out when I get a chance. But that was the show I grew. So there you have it.
So 1819 News is the answer to taking out left-wing local news sources that lie, that deceive the people, and who selectively and intentionally ignore any story that is a damage to left-wing liberalism, to our insane culture that's a byproduct of a bunch of sex weirdos and leftists who, frankly, fulfilled the Great Commission flipped upside down. They've just been way more effective at that. There's a story behind the founding, and then let's call it maybe the explosion of 1819 News into, the hand of God. I know you'd say that as well. 100%. Bringing this company you've built to where it's at. And I love this line from Hilaire Belloc, like all of history is biography. History is people are stories, and what people did. And so as our listeners are starting to love you and learn about 1819 News, which you're going to be growing, and there's some more news about that as well. How did God just bless everything you put your hands to in building this news company? And there's a particular one story you covered, and it's as soon as Brian tells you guys that, you're going to be like, that's too on the nose. There's no way that just go, Brian.
It's a doozy. All right. So we launch, I think 2 years into blowing and going, like right at the 2-year mark for us as an organization. I mean, we were getting some market share. We were certainly breaking some stories, and we were growing.
And like 2021, Or
20, October 18th of 2021 is when we wrote our first story that was published. So 2021, and then this is October 2023. I think that's right. Yeah, that's right. October 2023 is when this happened.
2 years ago.
Yeah. So it was exactly. So it's 2 years and then 2 years. So, we have this guy who's been a really reliable source that had helped us break some big stories before. And he calls, one of our reporters saying, man, you're not going to believe this, but, there's this guy, he's a mayor and a mayor of Smith Station, Alabama, which is this kind of up and coming little town in kind of over near Auburn. And he's a mayor, and he's also the pastor of First Baptist Church, Phoenix City, which is another small town kind of over in that area. And he says this guy is living a double life as an online trans porn star. And I'm like, what? There's no way this is real.
Mayor
because we get
and a pastor.
Yeah, a mayor and a pastor, not like a pastor of like some weird off the wall like snake wrangling like bizarre who knows what's going on there. This is a First Baptist church, okay. And so I'm like, this is bizarre. This can't be real. We get so many stories brought to us where people are like, oh, it's this, and then you look at it and it's not that. That happens all the time, and so we're thinking that's what this is going to be. And our reporter, Craig Monger, starts looking into it, and, buddy, it's 1,000 times worse than that. Okay? And we're just like, oh, my goodness. Ugh. Okay? And we're going, and not only is he a double public figure on public profiles like Reddit and other places, posting these raunchy, vile, pornographic images of him dressed in his trans kind of alter ego, or cross. I don't do the thing where I differ, but it's not a cross-dresser. He's actually because of it. And it's like, no, they're all trannies. I don't care.
Yeah.
Okay. And so his trans alter ego, and it's vile and disgusting. Well, we also find that he does he's a very prolific author. And what he authors is homoerotic slasher fiction, because that's what every pastor at a First Baptist church that's a mayor does, is they write homoerotic slasher fiction. And it gave intimate details of the sodomy and everything that was included and how it felt and all these other things. But not only that, it also went into how he wanted to stalk one of the women in his and he used her name in the name of her business, and she was actually friends with his wife, and used her name in the name of her business and said that he was going to stalk her and mimic her every move so that he could kill her and transition into her identity to have sex with her husband. What? Okay. And so anyway, we published the story on a Wednesday. He gets in the first story was basically that he was, doing the online trans porn, and that he was creating memes where he was encouraging children to transition their gender. He was a youth pastor before he was the pastor, by the way. Surprise. I'm sure that's going to shock someone that he wanted to be around kids. And so we published that first story, and then all these other things start pouring in after that. Okay. And then, but Wednesday morning, we published a story. Wednesday night, he gets in the pulpit of his Baptist church and defends himself and downplays what he's done.
Oh, right so after you dropped the first story about this guy.
After we dropped the first story. And as soon as we dropped it, it went national. Everybody was talking about it. It was a national story immediately. And shortly after went international. Okay. And so he defends himself from the pulpit. So we drip out 3 more stories that are just worse and worse and worse, with the final one being the woman that he said that he wrote about stalking, and et cetera, et cetera. And that was on a Friday at 2:00 when that story published. And once that one published, it really exploded. And so the county sheriff there sent some deputies to go do a wellness check on him, just see how he's doing. This is obviously, you're in the dead center of the news cycle, all across the country. Let's go check on him. So they go to his house and he's not there.
Local law enforcement, just to see if he's okay, is what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, wellness check. Oh, correct.
Wow.
Which is standard operating procedure in that situation. Is like, hey, he's probably suicidal at this point. We're going to go check on him. So they go to do a wellness check on him, and he's not at his home. And as they're leaving the neighborhood, they see his car. So they turn their lights on just to like check on him. Like, hey, stop. We're going to check on you. Man, they turn their lights on, and he takes off. Just goes. And so they get into a chase with this guy. The chase comes to an end, and he gets out with a pistol, waving the pistol. And so the cop's drawn down on him, right? And he says, I can't take this anymore, and puts the gun to his head and pulls the trigger and kills himself. Okay. Not the desired outcome. This is not our goal. Him stepping down and going to get help, much more desirable result. But at the end of the day, he chose to respond that way. We didn't. Normal, responsible people understand that, but we don't live in normal, responsible times as a society. And so what ended up happening is the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Daily Beast, the Guardian, all of the biggest news outlets in the world blamed 1819 News, me, Craig Monger, Jeff Poor, our editor-in-chief, blamed us for killing him. Blood is on your hands, Brian Dawson. Blood is on your hands, Jeff Poor. Blood is on your hands, Craig Monger, 1819 News.
Because you broke the story.
Yeah, and so and it's just
saying,
insane.
hey, by the way, there's a pastor down the road who's doubling as a trans porn star and writing homoerotic stories about kids.
Yeah, killing people and having sex with their husbands.
My gosh.
Yeah, that happened.
It's time to stop sitting on the sidelines, guys. This American revival we're experiencing right now needs your unapologetic voice. So mark your calendar to join us at our second annual Life or Death Con in Washington, D.C. on January 22nd, 2026. Life or Death Con at Union Station in downtown Washington, D.C. Come on, the day before the March for Life. It's a one-day charge to awaken, equip, and send out believers who are ready to make a real difference in the culture. For too long, the church has watched evil from a distance while the battle rages on around us and we do our discipleship Bible studies. That's good. But listen, the tide is turning and your voice, your courage, and your leadership are essential to what's coming next. We are bringing out the boldest Christian leaders to you in the culture war with wisdom and clarity. We have Steve Dace, Megan Basham, Abby Johnson, Dr. George Grant, Nolene Cedra, AJ Hurley, and more. Then the very next day, march shoulder to shoulder with us and the White Rose Resistance at the March for Life in our nation's capital on January 23rd. So get your ticket today at lifeordeathcon.com, lifeordeathcon.com, and use code Seth, my name, SETH, for 20% off your ticket. You're welcome. I'll see you in Washington, D.C. on January 22nd, 2026.
We're not worried about that. We're worried that someone said something about it, which is very kind of like anarcho-tyranny in the court of public opinion, kind of a little bit. It's very similar to like what you see over in England right now with the Pakistani rape gangs, where the girls that get raped, like if they say something about getting raped, like they go to jail, their parents go to jail. But the rapists, they're like, oh, no, you're cool, bro, fist bump. And it's like, this is freaking bizarre. Yeah. Anyway, so it's like on par with that, but in the court of public opinion, okay? And so we get blamed for killing this guy. And so for 3 weeks, we were front page news on the biggest news outlets in the country. I got to feel what it felt like to be Donald Trump for three weeks straight, okay? It's not fun. And then what happens when these major publications allude to the fact that there's like some culpability on our part for his death, all the purple-haired, kind of LGBTQ mafia people are just clickety-clacking on the computers in the basement and doing all the research on us. And next, all over social media is pictures of my family with my home address underneath talking about killing my kids and everything else.
Oh, so
this
they
happened to me. It happened to Jeff. It happened to Craig. So we got doxxed.
Whoa. Okay.
And it was insane. We had protesters show up to our place of business. I had to hire security for 3 weeks. It was insane, And, but the thing about it was, to a certain degree, it was a grace from God, because you never know what your organization is made of. Just like you don't know what a house that you build is made of till a storm comes. We didn't know what we were really made of until that storm came. And man, through that process, we didn't lose a single donor. We didn't lose a single employee, and it galvanized our team like never before.
Yeah, that's right.
And since then, we're absolutely fearless. Like if we can survive that, there's nothing you can do to us.
That's
nothing.
right. Amen. I told you guys, it's the most insane story ever. By the way, so wait, why did this, pastor, mayor, trans porn star, homoerotic, pedophilic slasher novelist, why did he run and drive away when the police just came to check on him? Because, it might have been perverted and weird, but unfortunately, Brian, publishing trans porn of yourself is legal.
Yes.
It's just super weird.
Yeah.
But why would he run if what he was doing was legal?
Well, there's a scripture, Seth, and this is how do you not get sued? This is conjecture. Yeah, that's what I'm about to do. There's a scripture that says the wicked flee when no one pursues. So, and so based off of some of the phone calls we got, after he shot himself, and then also after the first story we broke where we had all these young ladies that were reaching out to us and everything, I think he might have thought the gig was up. That's what I'll say. That's what I can say. I think it's my opinion that he may have been thinking that the gig was up, and so he took off, and decided to end things that way.
There's usually, where there's smoke, there's fire. Usually when so. Anyways, that it's one of the reasons that I say too, Brian. It's like, hey, listen, I can't prove to you right now that California State Senator Scott Wiener, that's literally his last name, is diddling kids or has illegal browsing history. But I have a hunch.
Yeah. It's one of them hypotheses.
Yeah, there you go. So that's the story behind 1819 News, guys. That's now the most trusted and certainly and the second largest, maybe the largest real news source in the state of Alabama. And build, baby, build. You're going to be taken over. Can you tell us anything about where 1819 News is going next, where people can learn more?
Sure.
It's very exciting. Localism. If we can't fight locally, this whole American experiment's over. And that's why we love what you're doing.
Amen. So, we have had numerous states from out west, from Idaho, Arizona, Utah, Ohio, South Carolina, North Carolina, Ohio. I mean, you get it. I can just go around the map and say states. You get what I'm saying. Okay, I don't need to say all the states. Tons of people, legitimate people who could pull this off in their respective states, reaching out to me saying, Brian, can you come do this here? And so that's our plan. We're creating a superstructure that's going to be planting these news organizations in states. We're going to be moving one state north. Our plan, again, I can't promise this. We don't have anything official yet. Our hope and our plan is to go to Tennessee. And so if there's people listening to this that are in Tennessee that would like to see this happen, please reach out to me. You can go to the website at 1819 News and just do an info at 1819news.com. Would love to talk to you about that. But and then where you can find us, if you don't live in Alabama and you just want to watch, I can't tell you how many people. I have people who send me like $1,000 a month from other states, right? That are like kind of like mini patrons doing $1,000 a month, and they don't even live in Alabama, and they just love reading the content because they just love seeing what we're doing and the impact that it's having, and the return on investment for them is incredible. So. But if you live in Alabama, more for everybody, go to 1819news.com, sign up for the newsletter. We put out a newsletter every single day that's got all the news you need, all the opinions that matter, and all the podcasts we produced in the last 24 hours. And then my podcast, you can go wherever podcasts are found, which is 1819 News, the podcast, on YouTube, 1819 Podcast. But yeah, that's it. And so, if you're not following us, follow us on social media, follow us, get the newsletter, all those things. We appreciate any support you'd send our way.
1819 News. It's amazing. You have to wonder how many other shocking evil stories, similar or semi-similar to what you shared, are never exposed because we don't have a news culture. We don't have a culture that cares about truth anymore. That's actually going to go chase stories. That's going to go want to actually expose evil and hold people accountable. We haven't had that culture in America for some time now. And so I'm just excited about seeing the Lord expand what you're doing in different states because information's power. When people know what's happening, what the reality, that changes how we live. I mean, we saw that in 2020. We've seen that, I think, after the 2020 election. We've seen that after they murdered Charlie in broad daylight. When you really see the nature of evil for what it is, people are radicalized for the truth. They're radicalized for courage. And that's why groups like 1819 News are so important, because you guys are willing to actually chase stories and tell the truth about things that very few people are willing to tell the truth about. And sometimes that comes with a cost. And in this case, I mean, the amount of death threats that you got, we're just grateful for your courage, man. So 1819news.com.
Correct.
And you have podcasts now too?
Yeah, you can go to 1819 News, the podcast, wherever podcasts are there. You never know what you're going to get. It's like a little bit of Forrest Gump, which is Alabama also, but I digress.
There you go.
Yeah, like I'll do a monologue where I just go scorched earth on gays, Muslims, and our teachers union in the state, or I'll bring on, Coach Tommy Tuberville to talk about whatever's going on, or just whoever, whatever. I had Megan Basham on a couple weeks ago. I'm going to have you on soon. You never know what you're going to get.
That's amazing. Wonderful. Yeah. I mean, I've spoken in Alabama a few times, and some of the just most amazing Americans I've ever met when I've spoken there. So, well, Brian, we'll leave it there for today. Guys, 1819news.com, 1819news.com. Let them know if you want to see something like this in your state. I'm sure Brian and his team will move as fast as they have the funds and the time to move. And they're certainly taking over. It's almost like, I don't know, it's almost like a Christian nationalist, dominionist, like Daily Wire or something. It's coming.
But better.
I love it, bro. All right, guys. Well, hey, head on over to iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. Give us a rating and review. Share this episode. I mean, come on. This guy, show me a man in your church that's as courageous as Brian. They don't make them like Brian Dawson anymore. Okay, but they will, and we will. What do the Muslims say? We're gonna conquer the West through the womb of our women. Me and Brian are gonna reclaim the West through the wombs of our wives, and we're gonna raise a bunch of little dragon slayers. And you should do the same if you're listening to us right now. Why? Because everything's local. And that is what's driving Brian and 1819 News. We need to live like that as believers. So share this episode. Please share this episode. Go to thewhiterose.life and join us as an ally. $35 a month or $70 a month. You get the book club. We read books together, talk about them live on Zoom. And join us in DC the day before the March for Life for lifeordeathcon.com, lifeordeathcon.com. We already told you the speakers you're going to be hearing. It's going to rip your face off, and it's going to be at Union Station in downtown Washington, DC. You're not going to want to miss this. Until next time, I'm Seth Gruber, and this is The Seth Gruber Show.